This is the last home and away edition of the Brisbane Lions Fancast with Dom, Fay and Michael Whiting. Not the last one for the year. We will be back with trade and draft editions, hopefully. But Mike, what a way it was to go out on Saturday afternoon down at Simmons Stadium.
Yeah, gee, what a game it was, and what a finish. That's probably the most animated I've been watching a game of footy, from my lounge room all season. So, bit of a heartbreaker in many ways, wasn't it? Just getting so close and looking like that win could have taken Brisbane into the finals. And as it turned out, of course, Carlton snuck home by a point in their match against Port Adelaide. It would have been for nothing. But the performance from the Lions was, through my eyes, was definitely the best. Definitely the best performance of the season. How do you see it, Dom?
Well, I think Saturday was an emotional rollercoaster for any Lions fan. I think it started at about 2 p.m. with fear before the game started. At halftime, that fear turned into hope. At full-time, that hope had turned into heartbreak. Then in the Carlton game, at the end of that one, it turned into relief. And then I think later that night, it turned into pride. And I think that was, for me at least, that was the path I went along throughout the day. And you can sit there, and I've seen the replay so many times, and you just think, if Leicester had connected or waited another second to get better connection, we win the match. But on the other hand, how heartbreaking would it have been to win the match and then see Port Adelaide, I can't remember who kicked it, but hit the post with seconds left and lose.
Matt Broadbent, I think it was, yeah.
And to not make the finals after beating Geelong in Geelong, with those circumstances of Carlton winning, I think that would have been more heartbreaking.
Yeah, it would have been a heartbreaker, and you don't know if the Lions and Geelong result had filtered to Amy Stadium and whether that had any impact. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but you never know if Brisbane got over the line, how it would have affected the mindset of the players down there, or if it would have. But it's all ifs and buts, isn't it? I guess, like you said before, the end result was a courageous performance, and it was a performance that the club and the players and the fans should take a lot of pride in, because teams just don't go to Geelong down to Simmons Stadium. Sorry, Simmons. Down to Simmons Stadium and give Geelong close run. What, they've won 43 out of their last 44, and by an average of 9 goals they win by down there. So running them so close within a Ryan Lester kick, or a poor, I'd say dodgy, but it was a poor umpiring decision in the goal square with 10 seconds left. To get that close was remarkable effort, and in many ways, they probably deserved to win in the end. Yeah,
well, it was seriously some of the best football I've seen this side play, if not the best football I've seen this side play, because we saw against Essendon down in round 8 a four-quarter effort, which was something we hadn't really seen, and we saw it again in even more testing circumstances on Saturday afternoon. All our players stood up, and I just think, from Rockcliffe with so many touches, to Redden at his tackling best again, and Jordan Lyle, who really stood up with a few very pivotal goals. It was just such an encouraging performance, and who wouldn't want to coach that team?
It was good advertisement, wasn't it, for the coach, for any prospective coach. But the most noticeable thing to me was how good, when Brisbane decided to be daring and take the game on and go through the corridor. And it's something we talked about at the start of the season. That's was the blueprint through the NAB Cup that was so successful there, and sort of went to pieces in the early rounds. But when they moved the ball quickly and are daring, gee, they look good. And also just the entries into the forward 50 were terrific. There was a lot of short passes. There was no bombing long, because there wasn't sort of too many options to bomb long too. So they hit up those short targets, and Ash McGrath kicked a whole bunch of goals, and Zorko kicked a couple, and there was just all those little options. Josh Green kicked a couple when he came on. Just finding those short targets looked like a really potent setup when they had the ball.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what do you make now that we can look at the complete body of work of season 2013 for the Brisbane Lions?
Well, I've been racking my brain the first few days of this week, having to write different things for the website and for the footy record. But, it's probably, we always compare the current season to the previous season, don't we? So it was 10 wins each, and in all honesty, it was probably about the same level. I don't know. I think individuals progressed. Not sure if the team progressed too much as a whole, although we saw glimpses, particularly in that last match, of what they can do. Obviously, the turmoil off the field late in the season is a talking point that's still ongoing and hasn't helped the club. So that's probably what 2013 will be remembered for as much as anything. But individual progression, but probably flatlining as a team, I think, in general.
The potential is undoubtedly there to see. Now, if you didn't believe it at the end of 2012, you'd have to believe it now.
I think you're right. I think and that's probably, I'd probably want to preface that previous statement by saying that the best footy this year was better than it was in 2012, and that's probably what we saw.
Well, the best footy is what I said to my mate I was watching the game on Saturday with was quite simply, for the first time with this young side today, I'm seeing a side that could compete with the top sides, throughout the whole match, throughout 4 quarters. A side who could challenge for top 4 down the track. All of a sudden, we didn't look like these, 12th or 13th placed players like we have for a while. We looked like a genuine competitive side who in a few years, with the right development, could well be at the top of the competition.
Yeah, and let's not forget without Jonathan Brown and without Simon Black.
And Dan Merritt too.
And Dan Merritt. Like, if we had have said that at the start of the season, you probably would have been laughed at. And we don't know where Brownie and Blackie are at with their careers at the moment. We know they're both sort of weighing up their options. And I'm sure everyone probably wants them to play on, but I guess we've seen a glimpse into whether that's next year or 2015 that, you know what, even when those guys aren't here, there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So the midfielders really stood up, and as you touched on, Jordan Lyle did really well up forward, and those forwards really stood up and showed that, when these guys do decide to finish their great careers, that there is a bit of hope there.
And obviously just how much hope that is will largely be related to which coach we end up going with. That saga has taken another turn throughout the week with Paul Roos, who was our preferred candidate. He has announced that he's almost definitely, at least this is how I'm reading it. There's a lot of almost
definitely's here, Dom.
Yeah, going to coach the Demons next year. And it was announced that we are interested in Lee Tudor. I think was a name mentioned. Adam Simpson was mentioned again. Rocket Eade was mentioned, but he has re-signed on with Collingwood to take on the football director position there. So I think you can just about rule him out. It does make you wonder, though, where are we currently at with this coaching race?
I guess from where we sit, Dom, and there's a lot of... there's a bit of speculation, but there's also a couple of facts that we do know. As you said there, that Paul Roos at this stage seems likely to coach Melbourne, Rocket Eade, back at Collingwood. So I guess it leaves us... We've always had 2 categories here, haven't we? I think when we look at these coaches, that's experienced coaches that have got a proven track record. The guys left in that race, I guess, looking from the outside, would be John Worsfold, not tied up at West Coast just yet, so his name comes up. Neil Craig, who's obviously probably left hanging if Paul Roos takes on Melbourne, and possibly Mark Williams, although I think he's probably the third in the line there, because I have a feeling that he went to Melbourne this year to stay there. But I guess they're the 3 guys that have experience, proven records. And then we've got the untried, the assistant coaches. You touched on Lee Tudor there, Adam Simpson you also mentioned. Scott Burns is another name that comes up. So I guess they're the categories we've got, isn't it? I guess, who knows what's best? We don't know, do we? So
do you have a personal preferred option at the moment?
I keep changing. I change my mind all the time, Dom. Yeah. I really don't know. My initial thought was it has to be a senior coach. It has to be a proven coach, because that's what the board wanted. They wanted someone that could do it. But the more I think about it, and maybe it's just because Paul Roos has dropped out of the race and you're trying to rationalise it with yourself, but I do think that a unproven assistant coach would be fine. We've seen so many good examples of it. Just in the last 2 years, we've seen... Well, Ken Hinckley's the one I have sort of mentioned a few times on this show as the great example this year of a guy who's had a long apprenticeship and shown what he can do at a club. We saw Brenton Sanderson do the same thing at Adelaide last year. So there's very recent examples of guys that can take their teams from wallowing in the bottom 4 the previous year back into the top 8. So that's the way I'm leaning at the moment. But if you ask me next week, I might change my mind. What do you reckon, mate?
My preferred option right now, I'm just going to come right out and say it, is Lee Tudor. From when I first heard his name mentioned, I think by a footy journo on Twitter back in about March, and hearing the record that he has, which is an absolutely incredible record, I just thought this is someone who could be special. Now, everyone's saying that we should be going after these people like John Worsfold or like Alistair Clarkson, which is a pipe dream. But you've got to realise these were all Lee Tudors at one stage. Alistair Clarkson came and got the Hawthorn job as an experienced assistant ahead of other experienced coaches. And, he is now the coach of the best side in the competition. So I genuinely am backing the idea of someone like a Lee Tudor. If it's Adam Simpson or Scott Burns or any of the other names, Alan Richardson thrown up, I wouldn't complain. But Lee Tudor at the moment is the guy I would love to see take the job.
Well, you're right. You're exactly right. They all do start from that same position, don't they? We look at the premiership coaches of the last 10 years, they all started like that. Bomber Thompson started like that at Geelong, and in many ways did his apprenticeship there as well in his first few years. And any coach has to start somewhere. So all the successful ones get their chance, and Brisbane may well provide an opportunity for someone. And whoever does get the job does have a very good list to work with. And they've got a list that's now got some maturity about them. Everyone talks about 50 to 100 game players. Well, there's a bucket load of them at Brisbane, and they should be ready to make a jump next year. And obviously that's what the board hoped for in deciding to not renew Michael Voss's contract. They thought this group was ready to take the next step, and whoever does come in has got a fantastic opportunity. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Stay tuned to lions.com.au this week, actually, because there will be an exclusive interview that we're going to have with General Manager of Footy Operations, Dean Warren, who is also the chair of the coach selection panel. So I'm sure we'll get some more answers there. Just before we wrap up today and for the home and away season, Mike, the club champion is this Friday night.
Big night.
It is.
Big
It's
night.
a massive night. I think it's the best night as a fan for the club. I went to my first one last year and absolutely loved it. Now, we've both had an opinion throughout the year. I think we've both been on the same page that Pierce Hanley is probably the front runner for this award. I'm going to have to change my mind at the last minute and say I'm now backing in Tom Rockcliffe.
Well, I can see why. My gut feel is that Pierce Hanley's been the best player, but as we know, it's not voted on a gut feel or what you think over 20. It's voted on after every single match by the coaching group, and we can quickly forget what happened in the first 6 weeks, can't we? Or the middle, or 6 rounds in the middle of the season or something.
Well, the perfect example is last year when everyone thought Jack Redden would win it because he had a great end to the season, and that was freshest in everyone's mind. But he had a bit of a slower start to the year, and people forgot that, and that was where Joel Patfield got the votes and won the medal in the end.
He did. I'm going to stick with Pierce. I think Pierce will get the job done, and I think he will. I think it'll be Pierce from Matthew Lornberger second and Tom Rockcliffe third. So there, I've put that out there. But I would not be shocked if any of those three won it. If anyone from outside those three wins it, that would be a surprise to me.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
Come on, Dom. Let's put him on the line here, mate.
Okay,
so you've got Rocky as number one.
Got Rocky as number one, Pierce is number two, Louis is three, and then I reckon probably Patfield fourth, but I think there'll be a bit of a gap between 3 and 4. I think Rocky will win it for the simple reason that this is an award voted on by the coaches. So all the standout games Rocky's had where he gets all those touches in the midfield and dominates the match, he'll get lots of votes for that, and rightfully so, and we're all aware of them. But those games where he was quieter and played up forward and played his role up forward that he was needed to, where we had guys like Ryan Lester or Josh Green developing in the midfield, I think he'll get votes there for playing his role in a way that most fans watching the game wouldn't give him votes on the performance alone, and I think that's what's going to clinch it for him.
It'll be very interesting to see, and I guess it's stacked in the favour of the guys that play a lot of games too. So like a Dane Zorko who played all season, he might be a guy that'll could figure up there this year, because we know last year he only got to play 15 or 16 games, I think, and he finished in the top 10. So with a full season, don't be surprised to see little Zorko sort of up there around that top 5 area as well.
Well, at the start of the year, we did give our predictions for a number of things. Now, some of these were including things like the Premiership and the Brownlow. These haven't quite been decided yet, but I think we can still listen back to these predictions now and have a listen to how we went. First is Brownlow. I've picked Trent Cotchin for the Brownlow. Who's your tip?
I've gone with Paddy Dangerfield.
Premiers?
I'm just leaning towards Hawthorn, although I'm a bit more nervous the longer that prediction goes.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with the West Coast. Where do you think the Lions will finish on the ladder?
This might not go down too well with a few Lions fans, but I've got them finishing 10th. I think Brisbane will improve significantly as a team, but just can't quite see them getting over enough teams to get in the 8.
I'm going 7th. And club champion?
Jack Redden. He's a guy
Okay.
I really like. Jack Redden, and I think he's been knocking on the door the last couple of years and Mr. Consistent. I think he might just sneak it this year.
I'm going Dane Zorko. Not exactly our finest moments there, Mike, but some of them were a little close to the mark at times. You did okay with where the Lions would finish, but I think I comprehensively failed there.
It's almost embarrassing to look back on it sometimes, isn't it? But you put yourself out there, you've got to be accountable for your predictions, don't you? That goes for both of us, so we're no geniuses, that's for sure.
I will just hold on to my perfect score prediction of the Essendon game in round 8.
You can always hang your hat on that.
Yeah, that's my one for the year. That is the Fancast for this 2013 home and away season. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we are expecting to be back throughout the trade period. We're hoping to do a few shows then with getting Rob Kerr on as well. And also maybe a show or two around the draft and a few off-season specials as well. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned to the Lions website later in the week, though, because there will be an exclusive interview with Dean Warren, who is very heavily involved, in fact, leading the hunt for a new senior coach, and that will be an interview you cannot miss. Until then, that's the Fancast. See ya.
See ya.